It is the anniversary of September 11th, and I wanted to share my story of September 11th with you. This video is mainly for me because I wanted to share this story for quite some time. It's not a heroic story, but it does provide a unique perspective on what it was like to be a college student on the day of September 11th. I remember coming out of, I think it was an art history class around 10 o'clock in the morning in the library to find a group of about 20 students gathered around a television that someone moved in the hallway, and on the television was a building, the World Trade Center, and smoke plumes were just pouring out of it. I remember everybody watching it, trying to figure out what was going on. And throughout the course of the news program, they determined that a plane had crashed into the World Trade Center. I couldn't really stay too long because I had to get to other things in my day. I had to make it to other classes, so I started to walk back to my dormitory quick to get some books. I remember walking back to my dormitory, an acquaintance talked to me in passing and say, "Hey, did you hear that a plane hit the Twin Towers in New York City and that it was a terrorist attack?" Now that was an update that I didn't know, that this was all terrorist activity. I made my way back to the dorm and I turned on the television. And on the television, nearly all the channels were showing the footage of the buildings and starting to talk about how it was a terrorist attack. And within about 15 minutes of making it back to my dorm, all of a sudden I saw the second plane, footage of the second plane hit the second tower of the World Trade Center in New York City. And I couldn't believe it. It was like lightning striking twice, and it certainly confirmed that this was terrorist activity. The footage in my mind still just stands out amazingly. Huge explosions, and every single news channel was showing this. Interestingly, one of the most memorable things that I recall, though, is in flipping through the channels, MTV was not showing any of this. They were keeping with their normal stream of programming, which was music videos. And sadly, at the time, they showed the video, "Let the Bodies Hit the Floor" by Drowning Pool. Completely inappropriate given the context of every other television station. Now, I guess if we look back at what was going on, MTV, all of its staff was probably very concerned about their safety and just let the programming loop and got out of town. And I don't blame them for that. But that was just, again, an inappropriate song to be playing at the time. That song, in the days following and months following September 11th, was actually banned on US radio stations because they didn't want to depress people. Interesting fact, John Lennon's Imagine also made it onto that list. Seeing the second plane hit the World Trade Center and then hearing the news report of other planes that were hijacked and brought down over Washington and one other area in Pennsylvania, one of the other planes hit a portion of the Pentagon, and it was, again, confirmed this was all terrorist activity. At the time, I was dating a girl who was in Scotland doing a study abroad program. And I was very concerned to give her updates that I was okay. The telephone calling card that had worked perfectly within the days and weeks past, all of a sudden couldn't dial out of the United States. Now, I'm thinking this might have been some security measure by the US government, and I can understand, but imagine being that person in a different country and not knowing if the person you love is okay. It's gotta be difficult. After about an hour, hour and a half, I finally figured out, after trying different ways, that I could contact her through Instant Messenger. And Instant Messenger was just a chat program at the time that allowed me to get through and say, "Hey, I'm okay, things are good in Boston." I was about 45 minutes southwest of Boston, but regardless, I let her know that I was okay. After getting through to her and getting contact back on the Instant Messenger, I decided to call a friend at Emerson College in Boston. And talking to him, he said that police were on high alert in Boston, but everything was okay there. He mentioned that he had plans to leave the city, and I told him that I thought that was a very good idea. I remember I called a friend in Syracuse, New York. Now, I had lived in Massachusetts most of my life, which is just in New England above kind of where New York is. Didn't really know New York geography, My friend was in Syracuse and I wanted to make sure he was okay because I wasn't sure how close that was to New York City. Turns out it's a good distance away and he was fine. I was just watching the television and talking with people the rest of the day. Classes were canceled at the college in light of all of these events. And it was interesting because as I was moving across campus talking with people, I saw military helicopters going across the campus airspace. Not many of them, but maybe 1 to 3 over different periods of time. And again, it confirmed this high alert status that we have. Our college was not near any kind of military airspace, and so seeing military-grade helicopters flying across the campus airspace is not the usual. And that pretty much was my September 11th. And it's interesting because from that point on, a lot of things changed. Security measures got heightened. Airports were never the same after that. The TSA was developed at that point in time, the body scanners, a lot more security measures were put into airports. You can only have things in 9 ounces worth of liquids in a small Ziploc bag that you could bring through security. You have to take out your computers. You get pat-downs now going through U.S. security at airports. Travel got very complicated. In the days following on campus, I remember we had a huge campus assembly on the Commons just to pay respect to the military and the victims of 9/11. It was just so many students had showed up. I was a resident assistant at the time, and we developed programming so that students could come to the RAs and talk if they were depressed, and also kind of candlelit vigils for the victims that were in 9/11. I remember, very interestingly, a lot of college students at the time were so infuriated by this, some of them actually pulled out of college to enlist in the military service, and at the same time, a lot of college students who were presently in the reserves, military reserves, got called into action. So everything was just crazy for the next several months. It was absolutely crazy the way that things evolved, and I really hope that something like that never happens again to any country.